Welcome everybody to our Sunday service for February 18th, whether you're in person in Invermere, in person in Golden, or online. Thank you for being a church family today, and welcome to any visitors that we have today. We have friends of our family, Sherry and Scott Montgomery, who are visiting from Edmonton, so welcome to Sherry and Scott. And any others, thanks for being here today. So normally we go through announcements at the beginning of our service. And so next Sunday, Reverend Rod Smith Merkley is giving the message. Rod and I are doing a pulpit swap where next Sunday he speaks in our church, and then on March 3rd I speak in his church. He serves a 2-point pastoral charge near Peterborough, Ontario. And then Ross Smiley will be giving a message on St. Patrick's Day, Sunday, March 17th. So today, St. Andrew's United Church has their annual general meeting after the service up in Golden. And next Sunday, we in the Windermere Valley Shared Ministry have our annual general meeting after our service next Sunday. We just give a shout out to the Mission and Service Fund of the United Church and the PWRDF Fund of the Anglican Church. Thank you for supporting those if you can. And just thank you for your financial support to whatever church you're a part of. We who are part of church life are a bit of a minority in society, so thank you for being a part of church life and supporting it. We continue to look for a house or an apartment for the Nwarfor family. If anybody knows of a place available, please let them know. So next Sunday, we're going to have a communion service at 10 o'clock in our chapel, and that'll just be before the regular 10:30 service. So next Sunday, communion in the chapel at 10. So this week, today, of course, is the first Sunday of Lent, and on Wednesday we begin our Lenten study on the book Centering Prayer and Inner Awakening by Cynthia Burgot. I'm going to just send everybody in the congregation links and the notes because I don't know yet who's going to join in. And if you'd like to join in the discussion, it'll be either in the afternoon from 1 to 2:30 or in the evening from 7 to 8:30 for 6 weeks. You don't have to join the discussion. Just reading the notes or reading the book is just beautiful. It's a lovely book, very wise. So, and then we have Fridays with Eckhart Tolle every Friday morning from 10 to 11:30 online. A very rich time. Let me know if you'd like to receive a link. Hi, Stephen. Come on in. Next Saturday is the Food Safe course that Marla has been organizing, and a number of people have signed up for it. So that's next Saturday from 9 to 5 here in Invermere. This is a little cartoon that fits the theme of today, which is Jesus in the wilderness, at the offices of the Children's Illustrated Bible. Hold on, Bob, we think there might be a typo in that verse. Then the Spirit led Jesus into the desert to be tempted by Santa. And so a little humor, theme of the day. We had a Shrove Tuesday pancake supper last Tuesday, thanks to all who came and those who helped make it happen. It was a lovely time. We had about 40 people and just a nice community time. The Affirming Ministry Steering Committee met last Tuesday. The next 2 sessions are planned for March 10th and 17th after church. I think we're going to hear more about that. And that's about us as a pastoral charge, including Golden, becoming like official affirming ministries. So Friday, March 8th at 7 p.m. here at the church in Invermere is going to be a World Day of Prayer service. The focus, well, it was written by Christian women of Palestine. So they would have written the service before October 6th, was it? 7th, October 7th. But still very, good to focus on that. So keep that in mind, men and women, if you'd like to come to that service. We've been reading through the 94 calls to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So we're almost done. Today we'll further read under the category of business and reconciliation. So call number 92. We call upon the corporate sector in Canada to adopt the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples as a reconciliation framework and to apply its principles, norms, and standards to corporate policy and core operational activities involving Indigenous peoples and their lands and resources. This would include, but not be limited to, the following. Hey, Brian and Lola, come on in and find a seat somewhere up. And if Benny moved over, you could sit right here and be, or over there is fine too. So last week we read point number 1. So today we're reading point 2 and 3. Ensure that Aboriginal peoples have equitable access to jobs, training, and education opportunities in the corporate sector, and that Aboriginal communities gain long-term sustainable benefits from economic development projects. And 3, provide education for management and staff on the history of Aboriginal peoples, including the history and legacy of residential schools, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, treaties and Aboriginal rights, Indigenous law, and Aboriginal Crown relations. This will require skills-based training in intercultural competency, conflict resolution, human rights, and anti-racism. So what I hear in this is that ignorance is not a good thing. So what they're asking for Canadians to do is to be educated and aware. Sounds like a good thing. We acknowledge that we are on Aboriginal territory. Here, this is the traditional territory of the Secwepemc people, the Ktunaxa people, and the Secwepemc people. And of course, it's also the chosen homeland of the Métis and up in Golden of the Inuit people. And it's lovely to be more conscious about living with one another. We always start our service with a moment of presence, which is just a moment to come into the present moment with our attention, to step out of our mind and just bring our attention into the present moment. I'm going to light the worship candle, which Tess and Wendy got us a new candle this week, and it's about 6 feet in the air. And so we put it here. I hope that when you're online, I hope you can see it. It's nice to light the worship candle on the first Sunday of Lent as we kind of begin a rich season. And I'm thinking this candle might be here for a few years. That's going to burn for a while. I just invite people to stay seated here in church in Invermere, and maybe wherever you are. Just stay seated. Let's sing maybe 3 times through this beautiful musical sort of invocation, Take, O Take Me As I Am. We'll sing it through 3 times. Take, O take me as I am, summon of what I shall be, set your seal upon my heart and live in me. Take, O take me as I am, summon of what I shall be, set your seal upon my heart and live in me. Take, O take me as I am, summon of what I shall be, set your seal upon my heart and live in me. Today is the first Sunday of Lent. Lent is a 40-day period before Easter. So 40 days, not including Sundays. Sundays are like a little Easter, a little day off of Lent. 40 is a symbolic number in various world religions. It is the time between times. In the Hebrew story, it rained for 40 days and 40 nights. The Hebrews wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. Moses was on top of Mount Sinai for 40 days, communing with God and receiving the commandments. In the Christian story, Jesus fasted for 40 days and 40 nights in the Judean desert. There were 40 days between the resurrection and the ascension. 40 spoke to a time of passage, to a time of change, to the transition between one way of being and another. The story of Jesus in the wilderness being tempted is also our story. We need to go through our own wilderness experiences. There is a need to find ourselves, to find our deepest self, our God self, and not live the self we have constructed or that society has constructed for us. Perhaps humans can fight or resist going through their own wilderness experiences, their own time of transitions, their times of facing their own demons and underlying energies and motivations. We may be afraid of falling apart, of being ripped apart, or of failing. Yet perhaps greater growth and integration awaits us if we go through our own wilderness experiences. Lent is a time for looking within, looking at oneself, of self-examination, of seeing what's going on within and underneath. Come, let us continue on our spiritual journey on this first Sunday of Lent. And our first hymn, all our hymns today are about this story of Jesus going into the desert. And so they're all kind of reflective, slower Lenten hymns. To the desert, Jesus came. Friends, I kind of want to just invite you to stay seated in church. Is that okay? But if you need to stand up because you're sitting too long, do that as well. But let's just stay seated because we'll see better, I think. And it's 113 in Voices United. Let's sing it.
We'll walk
Our words of wisdom today come from Anita Riefkind. She writes, I am reading a book titled God for Us, Rediscovering the Meaning of Lent and Easter. It is a series of essays by various theologians, one for each of the 40 days and Sundays during Lent and Holy Week. The first few, starting with Shrove Tuesday, are written by Richard Rohr, who spends a lot of time talking about what it means to fast. He says, this is how Jesus understands fasting from our prejudices, our superiority, and our ethnic divisions. And Rohr repeatedly makes the point that Jesus was not into asceticism, but rather saw life as a wedding feast hosted by God. It has long been my position that giving up chocolate or desserts or coffee or even meat is much easier than giving up, say, sarcasm. I know this by actually trying to do that 1 year. In my case, it would have been easier to try to be left-handed for the whole 6 weeks. I am reminded of what Lincoln once said, any man can withstand adversity. If you really want to test a man's character, give him power. What would it mean to fast from my prejudices? I don't know about you, but that first requires I acknowledge that I have some. Perhaps it is easier to discuss my preferences, which is a nice way of recasting what prejudices really are. I mean, who doesn't prefer people who are intelligent, well-read, talented, easy to get along with, and well-dressed? In other words, who are just like me, or who are what I like to think I am at any rate. As Groucho Marx famously said, I refuse to belong to any club that would accept me as a member. What would it mean to fast from my sense of superiority, my sense of entitlement? Do I ever put down my needs ahead of those of someone else? Because I can. And isn't that a bit like asking, am I human? If I struggle to give up sarcasm, imagine the kind of effort it would take to live for 6 weeks or even 1 day as though it is no longer I who lives, but Christ who lives in me. What would it mean to fast from ethnic divisions? Again, wouldn't I have to acknowledge first that I have some part in them? The point of Lent is to prepare our hearts and minds, our spirits for Easter because we need to. The point of Lent is to take a close look at who we have become, the ways in which we have distanced ourselves from God, and the divisions between God's people that we have helped build up or even just supported by our silence. Only then can we truly understand the meaning of Easter morning. It really would be easier to just give up chocolate. So that's a thoughtful reflection for us, I think, to hear as we begin the season of Lent. Oh, it's time for the story. All right. My goodness, I think it's going to work. So our story today is called Cotton Ball Colin, and it kind of fits the theme because, let me just tell you this, in the story of Jesus going out in the wilderness, it happens right after his baptism, right after he hears that he's God's beloved child and that God loves him. It says the Spirit drove him into the wilderness. The Spirit drove him into the wilderness. It's like God was saying, I love you, now you need to go and be tested. And I've heard it said that most parents would like to protect their children from struggle and from suffering. Of course we do as a parent. However, if our child didn't go through challenge, struggle, and even some suffering, they would suffer because they wouldn't evolve and they wouldn't grow. And so I find it so interesting that in the story that we read today, Jesus clearly hears that he's beloved, he's a child of God, and then the Spirit drives him into the wilderness to be tested. The wilderness sort of stands for a wild place. And if I can just say here that 40 is a symbolic number, so I know all of us can relate to going through our own wildernesses. And can I just say that for most of us, they don't just last for 40 days. That would be easy. Wilderness times can last for a much longer period of time. And they don't just come when we're young. As many of you know, you've been through several wilderness times in your life. And here you might be in the golden years of your life and going, it feels like we're in the wilderness, or I'm in the wilderness, and so on. Anyway, the story of Cotton Ball Colin, I think, fits the theme, so let's enjoy it. Once there were 10 baby mice. For mice, they were big and bold and bouncy, all except for Colin. Colin was the smallest. He was very, very small, even for a mouse. His mother didn't worry about his brothers and sisters. They were big enough to look after themselves. But she worried about Colin, Smalley, I guess that's the last name. She was afraid he might get hurt, so she made him sit indoors quietly. So you can see Colin on the couch there. And Mother's bringing in little medicine bottles. She wouldn't let him climb or run or jump in case he fell. He couldn't go out in spring in case he got wet, or summer in case he got hot, or autumn in case a chestnut fell on his head. By winter, Colin was very bored. He wanted to go out into the big, wild world, but his mother said, no. The world is too big and too wild for you, Smalley. You should wrap Colin up in cotton, said Grandma. Grandma's being helpful. What a good idea, his mother thought. And that's exactly what she did. There's Mother chasing Colin with the cotton. She wrapped him up round and round and round, so only his feet stuck out. Now he was Cotton Ball Colin. Can you see him in the picture? At last, he was allowed out, all wrapped up in cotton, safe from rain and sun and snow. Just got to check to see what the chat is. If he fell, he would have a soft landing. So there he's falling off a cliff. If anything fell on him, he wouldn't feel it. Colin was safe, as safe could be. Or was he? Oh, look, a snowball, laughed a little boy. He picked Colin up and threw him. Sploosh into the freezing river. Some of Colin's cotton came off. Oh, look, a piece of bread, quack, a duck. And it chased him, peck, peck, peck. More cotton came off. Colin swam and swam. He climbed onto the bank, all bedraggled. There's a word, bedraggled. Oh, look, a fat white rabbit, said a hungry fox, and it chased him, snap, snap, snap. All of the cotton came off. Colin ran and ran. He jumped down a hole and hid. The fox went away. Colin Smalley dried out in the sun. He skipped back home, feeling very large. Hi, Mother. Hi. Mother was horrified. Colin, where is your cotton? She shrieked. Anything could have happened to you. Everything did happen to me, he whooped. I got wet, I got cold, I got pecked, I got chased, but I swam and I ran and I jumped. And, Mama, I'm alive. I survived without the cotton. May I go out to play again tomorrow? His mother took a deep breath and said, finally, yes, if you must, but take care, take a coat, be good, have fun, love you, Smalley. So Colin went out into the great wild world. Sometimes he got scared and sometimes he got hurt. But oh, it was worth it. And that's the end of the story. Has your mom ever tried wrapping you up in cotton? Okay. So let's sing our next hymn, Jesus Tempted in the Desert, 115 in Voices United. Again, I'll just invite you to stay seated. Jesus tempted in the desert, lonely, hungry, filled with dread. Use your power, the tempter tells him, turn these barren rocks to bread. Not alone by bread, he answers, can the human heart be filled? Only by the word that calls us is our deepest hunger still. Jesus tempted at the temple, high above its ancient wall. Throw yourself from lofty turret, angels wait to break your fall. Jesus shot such empty marvels, feasts that fickle crowds request. God whose grace protects, preserves us, we must never vainly test. Jesus tempted on the mountain by the lure of vast domain. Fall before me, be my servant, glory, fame, you're sure to gain. Jesus sees the dazzling vision, turns his eyes another way. God alone deserves our homage, God alone will I obey. When we face temptation's power, lonely, struggling, filled with dread, Christ who knew the tempter's hour, come and be our living bread. By your grace protect, preserve us, lest we fall, your trust betray. Yours above all other voices, be the word we hear obey. Here comes Benny, Bendina. Hi, Bendina. There we go. I told Benny I'm just going to hover over her just to make sure it all works fine.
So the first reading is Genesis 9, verses 8 to 17. The first 10 or so chapters of Genesis are the creation stories. They are mythological stories. We may wonder what is trying to be addressed by these stories.
Not working. I just have
Oh, it's not working, yeah.
now it should work.
Okay, good, thank you. The story of Noah and the flood seems to reveal God's impatience with humanity and how God was going to do a redo, a recreation, a start over. Everything is wiped out except 8 humans and a couple or 14 of every species. It rains for 40 days and 40 nights, or for a longer period of time, depending on the source of the story. The story suggests that God is then alarmed at the violence God has done. So God makes the promise that God will never do this, never do it this way again. God puts a sign in the sky to remind God, not humans, but God, of this promise. The rainbow is a sign of a covenant, which is like an unconditional commitment, a commitment freely taken out of goodwill for the other party. Genesis 9. Then God said to Noah and to his sons with him, "As for me, I am establishing my covenant with you and your descendants after you, and with every living creature that is with you, the birds, the domestic animals, and every animal of the earth with you, as many as come out of the ark. I establish my covenant with you, that never again shall all flesh be cut off by the waters of a flood. Never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. God said, "This is the sign of the covenant that I make between me and you and every living creature that is with you for all future generations. I have set my bow in the clouds, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. When I bring clouds over the earth, and the bow is seen in the clouds, I will remember my covenant that is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh, and the waters shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh. When the bow is in the clouds, I will see it and remember that everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is on the earth." God said to Noah, "This is the sign of the covenant that I have established between me and all flesh that is on the earth." The gospel is Luke 4, verses 1 to 13. As the Hebrew people wandered through the wilderness for 40 years in their archetypal story, so Jesus has his time in the wilderness for 40 days. It is a time of testing, a time of transition, a time of discerning. Issues of allegiance are important in these texts. The early church declared Jesus is Lord in the face of the demand of Rome's emperor to be hailed as Lord. Jesus' refusal to serve the tempter reveals a similar tension. Allegiance is a form of trust. The texts today confess trust and allegiance that is grounded in God alone. Choices we may be asked to discern is our allegiance to lords of our society or to the Lord's voices and stories in our own minds. Can we discern what directs our lives? If it is your tradition to stand for the gospel reading, please feel free to stand. Luke 4. Jesus, full of the Holy Spirit, returned from the Jordan and was led by the Spirit of the wilderness, where for 40 days he was tempted by the devil. He ate nothing at all during those days, and when they were over, he was famished. The devil said to him, "If you are the Son of God, command this stone to become a loaf of bread." Jesus answered him, "It is written, one does not live by bread alone." Then the devil led him up and showed him in an instant all the kingdoms of the world. And the devil said to him, "To you I will give their glory and all this authority, for it has been given over to me, and I give it to anyone I please. If you then will worship me, it will all be yours." Jesus answered him, "It is written, worship the Lord your God and serve only him." Then the devil took him to Jerusalem and placed him on the pinnacle of the temple, saying to him, "If you are the Son of God, throw yourself down from here, for it is written, he will command his angels concerning you to protect you, and on their hands they will bear you up so that you will not dash your foot against a stone." Jesus answered him, "It is said, do not put the Lord your God to the test." When the devil had finished every test, he departed from him until an opportune time. May we hear sacred wisdom through these human texts. Thanks be to God. Amen.
Thanks, Bentina. Time for the message. So I'm going to pin myself. I think that's what I'm supposed to do. All right. There. Sorry, you have to look at that when I feel like Taylor Swift, she always has these jumbotrons. It's one of my favorite passages, this passage of today. As in golf, when you hit the golf ball correctly on the club, it says you hit it in a sweet spot. And this passage falls into my sweet spot. I love this passage. I love that it's there. And we can talk, did it really happen that way, but regardless of that answer, I think the important question is, like, what does it mean? And just really appreciating that it's there in the story of Jesus. That before he begins his ministry, he needs to go out into the wilderness, which is a place of wild. It's a place where you could not make it. You might get wrecked and so on. So wilderness becomes a good metaphor. I've known people who have talked to me about the wildernesses they go through, and I understand that when they talk about a wilderness time for them. And so before Jesus begins his ministry, like, honestly, if he's really going to serve God and be an authentic human being, he needs to go through this. And so he goes out into this wilderness, a place of wild. 40 days is symbolic. How long was that period of time? And again, it's not like we just go through it once and then we're all there and arrived and never need to go through another wilderness. When life shakes us up and all the things that maybe made sense to us all of a sudden start to crumble and don't make sense, we go through a wilderness trying to make sense. Life is a balance between order and disorder, order and chaos. And sometimes chaos happens and we just go through a wilderness time. And, he's fasting. Part of it is he becomes vulnerable. Like, there's a vulnerability in this time, and he's alone, which may be true when we go through a wilderness time. We're alone. Don't even know who to talk to. We're probably not talking to anybody. We're sort of alone in this period. Who really understands what we're going through? And then it says at the end of this 40-day period of time, the devil comes to tempt Jesus. Now, there's something I share every year on this Sunday that was so impactful for me. I went to a retreat once, and our guest speaker was Walter Wink, who passed away a few years ago. And Walter Wink talked about this story, and he said, every Jewish boy or girl would have failed this test, because every Jewish boy or girl was raised believing that the Messiah was going to come, and they were taught what the Messiah would do. They would turn stones into bread. They would be able to prevent people from suffering and have divine intervention go on in the world. And they would have political power over those lords that were hurting the people. That's what the Messiah would be. So the voice of the devil was really the voice of the people of Jesus's religion and culture that was in his head, that he had grown up with. This is what the Messiah is going to be. Be like what you've been raised to think the Messiah is going to be, what everybody expects the Messiah to be. That voice in your head is what you're wrestling with out here in the wilderness. And Jesus has to discern that voice and say no to it. Talk more about that in a minute. I like, the things about these three temptations. I find it helpful, and scholars have helped me see this, that Jesus is being tempted with economic power, religious power, and political power. If you're going to be the Messiah or spiritual person, a leader, you need to have economic power. And you can say, well, what's economic power? And I don't want to talk about this too much, but we have a presidential election going on in the United States. Somehow that just looms large versus the Canadian scene for me. But every president wannabe is judged on how they're going to affect the economy. And if people are paying too much for oil, too much for bread, that kind of stuff, well, we're not going to elect that president. We need progress, and progress is economic progress. that we're constantly growing that way, and that, people feel entitled to not paying much for anything. Consumers want to vote on that. So a politician is tempted with economic power. If you can have economic power, then you can have power. You can be elected. People will like you. And if Jesus could turn stones into bread and feed all the poor and feed everybody, oh, what a great Messiah. And religious power, one of the things it says that, the tempter said, throw yourself off the pinnacle of the temple, and before you schmuck yourself on the ground, the angels will come and they'll rescue you. So, for me, it can be understood that you won't suffer. If you're a person of faith, you won't suffer. This is really important, because people who are people of faith and the journey of faith, and who are part of a religious life, a spiritual life, we think that shouldn't we be wrapped up in cotton or a bubble, and life should go easier for us, and we should not suffer. Bad things should not happen to good people. So that's kind of what Jesus may be tempted with. But also, religious power might just be pulling strings in high places. Hey, preacher, can you pray for this? Can you make this happen? I get this periodically in my life. People say, oh, can you pray for good weather? And my response is, I could never worship a God who listens to me. My job isn't to pull strings in high places. It's very tempting, but I don't think that's what spirituality is about. I don't even think of God as intervening in the world, an interventionalist God. I don't. It's magical thinking for me, and superstitious and magical thinking. Anyway, that's a whole topic to itself. And then, of course, the third temptation is political power. How tempting is that? So it raises a question. So is today just about Jesus? And we look at his temptations. And I think it's so beautiful that before he begins his ministry, he's genuinely wrestling with this. Who am I? Am I going to be who everybody expects me to be? Am I going to be what I feel God calls me to be? And frankly, if Jesus had said yes to any of those temptations, I don't think I'd be here this morning. Because I just go, I don't want to worship. I don't want to follow that kind of person who's giving into those temptations. We could also ask the question, so how much has the church or church leaders fallen into the temptation of economic power, religious power, and political power? And we can answer that our own way if we want. So we can say, is today just about Jesus in the wilderness? And that's important enough, because we can actually go, yeah, this falls into my sweet spot. I am attracted to Jesus. I want to follow in his way because he said no to those temptations. Very luring, very attractive, very seductive. But I want to go to talk about our own temptations. And I've reflected this week that in 40 years of ministry, I don't think I've ever talked about temptation, because it just doesn't sound right. It sounds like what old-fashioned preachers talk about. It sounds like, we don't talk about sin much in church either, because people are tired of sin and so on, or they misunderstand it, and I get all that. And temptation, it sounds like kind of moralism and so on. Yet I talked to a young adult about a week ago about temptation, and the young adult said, oh, no, this is definitely a good topic for my generation. He was about 30. We're tempted all the time. There's so many temptations. When you have electronic devices in your back pocket, or on your desktop, or lying in bed looking at something, temptation is there. And he said, like it helped me. I go, okay, temptation? He was saying, no, this is an issue. I can watch a lot more videos, play a lot more video games than I want to. And I catch myself how much I get sidetracked with this thing. And then, of course, when we hear about Brampton, Ontario declaring a state of emergency because of fentanyl, and we know probably every one of our families have somebody who struggles with an addiction of some sort. Now, of course, there's obvious addictions, there's easy addictions. I mean, any substance, when you can see you're eating food or you're drinking alcohol or you're smoking something, it's easier to see those addictions. You know, the Super Bowl was last Sunday, and somebody said what percentage of the Super Bowl was gambling advertisements. So gambling, anyway, maybe is that easier to see? The temptations around that. Every once in a while you go into a convenience store and you're just buying a tank of gas, and before you leave, the clerk will say, "Would you like to buy a lottery ticket?" Don't tempt me. Like, no, and stop doing that. You shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be asking people if they want to do that. However, so there's substance addictions, there could be gambling addictions, but there's other less visible addictions, right? That we get tempted to. And today, you might be sitting there thinking, well, I don't know if temptation really is an issue for me. Because you might go, I don't have a substance addiction. Yeah, maybe I eat a little too much chocolate cake. I don't know, you might do that. And I don't really have a gambling addiction. Do I really have an addiction? What are those invisible addictions I might have? I did reflect this week, though, that, just the way that almost every store is laid out, where you stand in the checkout line, you are looking at what? And why do they put it there? They put it there as the kind of at the price range or things you might want to do. It just tempts you to go, oh yeah, so I'll pick up those kinds of things. Of course, advertisements, the whole nature of them is to tempt you in various ways. But there's other temptations, can we say? We might be tempted to work too much. I am. Maybe we're tempted to work too little. I don't know. In retirement, I don't know. In social life, when we socialize with people, are we tempted sometimes to talk too much, tempted to talk too little, to talk too much about ourselves? One of mine that I've been reflecting on this week is I'm often tempted. You see, all of us have anxieties, right? And we manage our anxieties, which is a whole topic to itself. We all have anxiety management programs. But one of the ways I manage my anxiety when I'm with other people is I tend to crack jokes. I like to crack jokes. It's a temptation I have. And I think, some of my jokes are sarcasm, or I just crack a joke. And this week, as I've been reflecting on temptation, I've been going, sometimes I'm in a social thing and I'm just about to crack a joke and I just catch myself. And I go, okay. So maybe there's different degrees of temptations. So maybe when you're tempted to overshop, overbuy, maybe that's not so serious as when, in our words of wisdom, you're tempted to judgment or entitlement or prejudice or, some kind of superiority. Superiority is always lurking there. We always are comparing ourselves to others and trying to figure out how do I compare? And how am I a little superior here? Are they a little inferior? That lurks around a lot. So maybe there's different sort of degrees of what we're tempted with, but I'm tempted to say that all of us are tempted with something. None of us get off scot-free today. I don't know if that's true, but I'm tempted to say that because it serves my purpose. To say, none of us today can go, this is just about Jesus. I don't need to take anything home from today's message. Because I think temptation is something that just is part of life. And we could almost say it's a good part of life because it gives us something to work with. So on last Friday, our Fridays with Eckhart group, we listened to a talk by Eckhart. I actually went looking for it on YouTube. Eckhart Tolle and Temptation. And it was a really good talk. It was about 15 minutes long. And it didn't begin with a question, but it was at a retreat. And I think this is what set it up. I think Eckhart, when he starts a retreat, he asks the people, he invites the people. He never says should or you have to. He just invites the people to not maybe drink alcohol, to not spend too much time on electronic devices. And one of them, I think he said, when you go to your room, don't necessarily turn the TV on. And I think one of the men who's part of the retreat asked the question to say, I can't stop turning the TV on when I go in my room. I just can't, I can't stop it. So this was Eckert's response. He said, well, I'd invite you then to see if you could sit for 3 minutes and just observe yourself. Observe the feelings inside of you, the sort of the craving, the desire and craving inside of you to turn the TV on. And don't use willpower. Don't fight it. That's not how it works. Don't fight it. Just observe it. And see if you can do that for 3 minutes. And as you're observing the feeling inside of you, observe what thoughts are going on in your head. Because now he didn't actually use the word temptation, but I'll just throw, with temptations, because he used another one, an example of a man who came to him who had an eating problem, he just overate. And the man said, I'll tell myself not to eat, but then I get home from a day's work and the justification thoughts start going through my head. Well, you've had a long day and you deserve that chocolate cake or something like that. So then Eckert said, not only for 3 minutes, observe the feeling inside of you, but see if you can observe the thoughts in your head. What thoughts are going on? What justifying thoughts are going on for you to do this? And then if you can make it to 3 minutes, maybe just ask yourself, can I go now to 6 minutes? And then at the end of 6 minutes, you might go over and turn the TV on, but at least you've had 3 or 6 minutes of observing. You've created a bit of separation or detachment from those feelings and thoughts. You haven't just been taken over by them and become them. You've been able to, for 3 to 6 minutes, you've been able to be the observer, the presence, the awareness. And that is almost a definition of spiritual awakening. Instead of just being taken over by your thought or feeling, you have been able to be the witness, the observer, the presence, the awareness. And even if, like after 3 or 6 minutes, you just go over and turn on the TV and get your fix, at least you've had a little bit of experience of observing and so on. And it may be that urge, that compulsion begins to shift inside of you. And it might even dissipate. It might go away. I think that's a lovely, I talked to a friend of mine who's an addiction counselor on Friday, and he said, I explained this, and he said, that's a lovely intervention. That's a lovely way of how it can work with any addiction, any temptation. Don't fight it, but can you observe it? Can you observe the feelings, observe the thoughts, but not get taken away by them, but be the observer and the awareness and so on. And then if I just take it back to the story of Jesus in the wilderness, if those temptations were in Jesus's head, that he'd been raised from since a child, and a desire to please his people and be what people expected him to be, I'd like to say he was able to watch it, to be aware of it, and to give it space, not to fight it. And then eventually it left. It said the devil left and went away. And he wasn't just swept away by those temptations or tempting thoughts and feelings. And so that ability to give space to, and space is such an important word, but space to what we're feeling, what we're thinking, and be the awareness, be the presence. So I just invite you now to give thought more today, but in this week, maybe in the season of Lent. What are you tempted? What tempts you? Can you find something? And then turn it into your spiritual classroom and go, okay, before I just get swept away with this thing, can I just be with it? Can I give it space? Can I observe it? And just see if it shifts and changes and maybe even goes away. And wouldn't there be a victory in that? Wouldn't you go, that feels good? And that's part of your spiritual practice in the season of Lent. So anyway, hopefully that's good news for us today. Amen. So going back then to our shared screen. Friends, I'm going to, here in person in Invermere, I'm going to invite you to stand for this hymn, just so to stretch your legs. It's kind of an old-fashioned hymn, O Love, How Deep. Anyway, 348 in Voices United. I didn't tell Lisa that we're not singing the last verse. The last verse is about Easter, so I took it out. Thanks. Please have a seat, everybody. And hi, Karen. I think I heard you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for leading us in our prayer time, Karen.
Okay. Let us pray. God of all times, God of all seasons, God of mystery and miracles, your love and care for us builds our hearts and minds. We are so grateful to worship and honor you today. We seek you, O God, in this time of quiet reflection. Be with us as we begin anew in this Lenten season to seek and to follow your path. By your power we stand, and before your goodness we bow. You made a covenant with us and all creatures. We see the signs of this covenant in every rainbow, in every smile, in every deed of kindness. May we get all obstacles out of our lives that keep us from wholeheartedly communion with you and to serve only you. Shower us with wisdom, patience, caring, and love. May we joyfully follow your ways, confident that we are always in your loving grace. We ask that our lives be centered in you, so that we might be a blessing to all people, to our families, friends, and neighbors, using the gifts you have given us freely. In our world, we pray for an end to all wars, all persecution, and all mistreatment. For all who are ill or suffering in any way, please send them your healing and comfort. Today, we pray for Lil and her family, the family of Fred Thodey Hamilton, the Whitehead and Detta families, Lee and Orst, Allegra, Taylor and Sarah, Deb, Robin and Cliff, Teresa, Joanne, Terry, Elizabeth, Kelly, Kathy, Rose, Sherry, Linda, Hillary, Dick, Florence, Roger, and Joanne, and all whom we name now aloud or in the silence of our hearts. God, who gives birth to the world, who gives us breath, fill us with your light and help us to usher in your reign of love, justice, and peace here on earth. Tune us to the harmony of the heavens. Teach us to sing your name. Grant us wisdom, hope, and compassion for all living things. Feed us what we need today and each day. Free us from what binds us as we release others from guilt and shame. Help us to focus on what is good and to do what is right. Teach us how to love. Renew our hearts, our minds, our strength, and make us whole and wholly yours. Amen.
Amen. Beautiful words and prayer, Karen. Thank you. And now I'll just invite everybody to stay seated, and we'll close our service. Well, almost. We have a benediction, but with our closing hymn, number 65 in More Voices, When We Are Tested. We'll just stay seated. When we are tested and wrestle alone, famished for bread when the world offers stone, nourish us, God, by your word and your way, food that sustains us by night and by day. When in the desert we cry for relief, pleading for paths marked by certain belief, lift us to love you beyond sign and test, trusting your presence our only true rest. When we are tempted to barter our souls, trading the truth for the power to control, teach us to worship and praise only you, seeking your will in the work that we do. When we have struggled and searched through the night, sorting and sifting the wrong from the right, Savior, surround us with circles of care, angels of healing, of hope, and of prayer. Our benediction today is entitled Beloved is Where We Begin. It's from Jan Richardson from the book Circle of Grace. If you would enter into the wilderness, do not begin without a blessing. Do not leave without hearing who you are, beloved, named by the one who has traveled this path before you. Do not go without letting it echo in your ears. And if you find it is hard to let it into your heart, do not despair. That is what this journey is for. I cannot promise this blessing will free you from danger, from fear, from hunger or thirst, from the scorching of sun or the fall of the night. But I can tell you that on this path there will be help. I can tell you that on this way there will be rest. I can tell you that you will know the strange graces that come to our aid only on a road such as this, that fly to meet us, bearing comfort and strength that come alongside us. For no other cause than to lean themselves toward our ear and with their curious insistence whisper our name, beloved, beloved, beloved. Amen. I'll stop recording the service. And then I think it worked. Technically, it worked.